Why do we procrastinate? It's a question that has plagued humanity for centuries. We know we should be working on that project, studying for that exam, or finally cleaning out the garage, yet we find ourselves drawn to distractions. We check social media, watch videos, or simply stare out the window. Anything but the task at hand. The truth is, procrastination is more complex than simply being lazy. Our brains are wired to seek immediate gratification. We are hardwired to prioritize short-term rewards over long-term benefits. This tendency is deeply rooted in our evolutionary past. Imagine our ancestors on the African savanna. They didn't have the luxury of planning for the long term. Their primary concern was immediate survival, finding food, shelter, and avoiding predators. In this environment, delaying immediate gratification could mean the difference between life and death. This ancient wiring still influences our behavior today. When faced with a task we perceive as unpleasant or challenging, our brains often prioritize immediate comfort. We procrastinate because it feels good in the moment. We avoid the negative emotions associated with the task, at least temporarily. Procrastination is a perfect example of the conflict between our ancient limbic system and our more recently evolved prefrontal cortex. The limbic system, often called the emotional brain, is responsible for our immediate survival instincts. It seeks pleasure and avoids pain. The prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, is responsible for planning, decision-making, and impulse control. When we procrastinate, the limbic system wins. The immediate pleasure of avoiding a task overpowers the prefrontal cortex's rational understanding of the long-term benefits of completing it. The good news is that understanding this conflict is the first step to overcoming it. To further understand why we procrastinate, let's look at two psychological phenomena: the planning fallacy and time discounting. The planning fallacy describes our tendency to underestimate the time it takes to complete a task. We are overly optimistic about our abilities and often fail to account for unexpected delays. This optimism bias leads us to believe we have more time than we actually do, making procrastination more likely. Time discounting refers to our tendency to value immediate rewards more highly than future rewards. We prioritize the pleasure of doing nothing now over the benefits of completing a task later. This is why we often choose to watch TV instead of studying for an exam that is weeks away, even though we know studying will lead to better grades in the long run. The battle between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex is at the heart of procrastination. The limbic system, driven by the amygdala, is responsible for our fight-or-flight response. It triggers the release of stress hormones like cortisol when we perceive a threat. When we perceive a task as unpleasant or overwhelming, the amygdala interprets it as a threat, activating the stress response. The prefrontal cortex, located in the front of the brain, is responsible for executive functions like planning, decision-making, and impulse control. It helps us resist immediate gratification and focus on long-term goals. However, the prefrontal cortex is easily overwhelmed by strong emotions like fear and anxiety. When the amygdala sounds the alarm, the prefrontal cortex can be temporarily taken offline. This explains why we often make impulsive decisions when we are stressed or anxious. We are more likely to choose the immediate gratification of procrastination over the long-term benefits of tackling the task at hand. Research has shown that chronic procrastinators have a larger amygdala and a less active prefrontal cortex compared to non-procrastinators. This suggests that procrastination may be linked to differences in brain structure and function. For example, a study published in the journal Psychological Science found that students who procrastinated more had lower activity in the anterior cingulate cortex, a brain region involved in error monitoring and conflict resolution. Section 4. Trapped in the procrastination cycle. Procrastination is more than just a bad habit. It's a vicious cycle. We procrastinate, then feel guilty and anxious about procrastinating, which leads to more procrastination. This cycle can be incredibly difficult to break free from. The guilt and anxiety we feel when we procrastinate are not just unpleasant feelings, they are also counterproductive. When we are stressed about not doing something, our cognitive resources are depleted. This makes it even harder to focus and get work done, perpetuating the cycle. Understanding the cycle is crucial to breaking free. We need to recognize that the negative emotions we experience are a normal part of the procrastination process. Instead of beating ourselves up, we can learn to acknowledge these feelings without letting them control our behavior. Section 5. Outsmarting your inner procrastinator, tips for action. So how do we outsmart our brains and break free from the procrastination cycle? While there is no magic bullet, there are evidence-based strategies that can help. First, the Pomodoro technique. This classic time management method involves breaking down work into manageable chunks, typically 25 minutes long, separated by short breaks. This technique works by creating a sense of urgency and reducing the feeling of being overwhelmed. Second, temptation bundling. Combine a task you enjoy with a task you've been avoiding. For example, listen to your favorite podcast while cleaning the house, or watch a guilty pleasure TV show while folding laundry. Third, implementation intentions. This involves creating specific if-then plans for when and where you will complete a task. For example, if it is 3 p.m., I will work on my presentation for 1 hour. This strategy helps to overcome procrastination by reducing reliance on willpower and making it more automatic to start working. Remember, overcoming procrastination is a journey, not a destination. Be kind to yourself, celebrate small victories, and don't be afraid to ask for help. By understanding the science behind procrastination and implementing these practical tips, you can take control of your time and achieve your goals.